And we are live. Welcome everybody to our fifth seminar. Digital Twins for Cities is the name of the series. My name is Ben Ketzler. I'm the Center Coordinator of the Digital Twin Cities Center, and I'm the host of this series. Today our topic is opportunities for civic engagement, and I'm really excited to have some support again for this session. Victoria Valdin is going to be our moderator. And Victoria is an anthropologist and partner at White Architects. Victoria, are you here? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, it's great to be here.
Good to have you. Really looking forward to just lean back and listen to you guys. I know it's going to be a really interesting discussion this time. And I would like to actually just invite you to start your part, and I will be in the background now. Enjoy, have fun.
Okay. So welcome. I'm a social anthropologist, but I work in an architecture firm because I focus on social aspects in urban planning and architecture. And one of the bulk jobs that we're doing is actually working with civic engagement dialogues. And I have a bit of scare of when it becomes too much digitalized, because I like to have the conversation and work qualitative, but I'm also really interested in this topic because I see the opportunities. I think the opportunities, if you marry the qualitative methods with this digital methods, it's so exciting. I think we can really get a full picture. So let's start with introducing our panel. And so first off, we'll have David Craig Wire McCall from Epic Games. Then we'll have Fabian Dempsky, he's a professor in digital participation. And lastly, we'll have Charlie Goldstein, who's a strategist at Civic. So with that said, let's start with David. Welcome.
Hey guys, how we doing? Super excited to be here. So, do you want me to just get started? I've got presentation is up on the board.
Yes, please.
Amazing. Okay, so thank you very much for having me. So today we are going to be talking about opportunities for civic engagement and why that's important and how Epic Games and the Unreal Engine are kind of helping facilitate this area. And I'll be talking a little bit about our use cases of where we're seeing it, a little bit of an introduction to who we are and why we're in this space to begin with. A little bit more about me. I work in the strategic development side of Epic Games, specifically in the architecture, engineering, construction world. My background is architecture. And so what I want to do is just take you through, who we are, and then we can go into some really cool use cases down the road as well. So for those of you who don't know who we are Epic Games, and we have this amazing tool called the Unreal Engine. So we're a software vendor, and this gaming engine tool is what we use to create a number of our own games. Some of you parents out there might recognize Fortnite. I apologize in advance. We also use it to create a number of other games, but that platform that we use to create Fortnite, we also license out to other game developers so they can build their own games on top of it. And that little corner up on the right-hand side in the non-games is where I sit. So how this gaming engine tool is being utilized across the industries from automotive to media and entertainment and beyond. Now, this topic of civic engagement and involvement is really interesting to us, mostly because at our heart, we are a game developer. I'll play that video. And so what we've been doing for years and what the tools that we build are sort of doing is they're there to create these engaging opportunities and engaging environments for games. We have a long-standing history of creating these experiences to get people involved and in depth with a story or a scene and be able to translate and communicate ideas in a virtual space. So they often say innovation comes from outside the industry, and what Unreal Engine and Epic Games have is a wide use of use cases from games through to the film and media and entertainment side to automotive, and how that tool is being used to communicate and collaborate a story across a number of different mediums. So, and you need to look no further than obviously our own tool, Fortnite. Whenever we talk about engagement, Fortnite has about 15.3 million concurrent users on at any one time. About 350 million Fortnite accounts are active and 2.5 billion friend connections. So whenever we talk about a tool that's very familiar with, outreach and engagement, Unreal Engine is just one of those tools which, its foundations are built around that. And what's great is it's not just targeted towards games, it's targeted towards creators of the world. It's targeted of those people who build things. And this is why there's such a heavy sort of influence and importance around the AEC world and the developments of our future worlds and cities. And we often talk about the Unreal Engine as being this advanced 3D real-time creation platform, where it really gives you this ability to add in your own custom functionality, your own custom story around how you want to share information and how you communicate that information. And this is really what we're going to be exploring today, is exclusively, how people are doing this within the space around digital twins and around civic opportunities for engagement. And to do that, we kind of focus on 4 key aspects. So just before we jump into some really cool stuff, we kind of focus in on the data aggregation side. So, the Unreal Engine absorbs data from IoT sensors, from the 3D geometry places, number of different sort of outsources depending on what you're working on. Unreal is a great aggregator for that. We have a connected ecosystem with a variety of different tools, some of which we'll touch on in this presentation. But the big one for today is this idea of collaboration. Out of the box, the tool comes equipped, ready to connect people from around the world, virtually, digitally, and in some cases, both virtually and physically. And the last one, which I think is most important for today as well, is any experience. So one platform can go out to any particular output. So it could be a desktop application, a mobile application, so it runs on iPhones, be on a web browser, and many more. So now that kind of background's been set, just wanted to quickly swing back to this. So what are opportunities for civic engagement and how the tool is being used in a number of different scenarios? So the first one, which I think we've seen over the last sort of few seminars, is the great work which Chalmers Technology are doing around using the engine to visualize data. And this is just one of the components where we see Unreal being used. There's this ability, I think we just did a blog with them, that was called Visualizing the Invisible, how you visualize that data so people understand it, even though it isn't visually sort of visible to the naked eye. So this is just one of the areas, but I'll go into a couple of other ones just to sort of share some other great use cases. Starting with Callison RTL. So this was my pet project prior to joining Epic. And it was this idea that we build these digital prototypes for cities, for urban master plans, for developments, and we even get our customers and our clients and our stakeholders and our chairmen in these 3D worlds. And we were really interested in actually capturing how they acted in that 3D space. Where did they go? What did they look at? What was important to them? What wasn't? And using those sort of that data to actually allow us to make modifications to the design process, so we could actually try and make the space more engaging and interactive before it ever even gets built. So this idea of trying to prototype a building before we build it and find out something doesn't work, we're actually now using this game engine technology to run those same simulations. And what's really interesting is this idea came from the fact this is what games have done for the last decades. They have online platforms where they monitor where people go and what they look at so they can add better development to their game platforms. Similarly, whenever we talk about creating these platforms where people can come in and interact with each other, Squint Opera have created this sort of virtual tool space where you can log into this virtual room via a web browser, via an application, and it's like a presentation format. But it's not just 2D pictures, videos, and static 3D models. They've actually crafted this tool in the engine to be able to tell an interactive story. Think of PowerPoint on steroids, where you're actually able to have this 3D immersive environment to help explain an idea to a group of people, to communicate to a group of people, and actually take them through an interactive story around the design and how it works. And if we go one step higher up into size and scale, we have Accu Cities. And Accu Cities have created this amazing sort of digital twin platform for London, where they communicate a variety of different city data, like height restriction data. And again, its idea is to break down the barriers of communication. It's there to help translate that information between city planner and architect, or city planner to the general public, to create an interactive 3D world where that data can be easily digested and understood. If we want to go super cool use case in this, we'll jump into Mirza, who created a kind of digital and physical interaction using Unreal Engine, where they 3D printed out a white massing model table and then projected the image from Unreal on top of it. Now, what this allowed them to do is in physical interactions, they're easily able to sift through live real-time data connections from that urban master plan and show that to end participants and show it to end users. So this one platform, many experiences can extend to a variety of different use cases. So finally, cities are just the beginning. And where we're seeing with tools like CCM, which is giving you access to world tiles across the globe, is that in the engine, you're able to marry that idea of 3D geometry or 3D GIS data, but with game engine interactions, whether it's a one-to-one person flying around, a drone, a plane, a car going through the city center. These tools are developing this ability for us to engage that data and beyond. I think it was Robert Jenerick's white paper on the future of planning recently noted that about 1% of local citizens engage with their local planning authorities. And the aim behind what Unreal is trying to do is create this frictionless, seamless experience to those end users. And this is where the future of real-time technology is coming in, and where the future of real-time will play a part in this, because coming up behind us is 350 million users who have grown up with Fortnite, who have grown up with these 3D technologies. So they're going to be ready and expecting to ingest data in a similar format. So we're very excited with where the future is going. I think I'm just about up now, so I will say thank you for having me and open up for any questions.
Thank you so much, David. And I think that so that we can keep time, please write your questions in the YouTube chat, and we'll just run through the presentation and have a full conversation. So please do that, and then we'll take up your questions later on. I mean, this is a lot of information in a short time. I will tell you that if you Google on David in YouTube, you'll see this presentation done by 1 hour and 20 minutes or so, and you'll get more in depth to it. So I will encourage you to do that. By that, I would love to welcome our next guest, Fabian Dempsky, and I'm sure you will tell a little about what you're doing as a professor on digital participation. Welcome.
Hey, Victoria, it's me. It's unfortunately not Fabian. Fabian just disappeared. Oh, he's coming back. All right. Never
Sorry. Excuse me. Just in this moment, my Chrome stopped. Here I'm.
It's fine. You have to expect anything in these digital times.
Yeah, that's true.
It's great to see you again. So you're very welcome, Fabian. And you can please go ahead with your presentation. And again, write your questions on the YouTube chat. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions, so we can have a good discussion in the end.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining. I'm here currently in a double role. I'm working since several years at the High Performance Computing Center in Stuttgart on the development and application of digital tools, digital twins, and high performance computing for global challenges. And since this year, I'm also at Tallinn University of Technology at the Academy of Architecture and Urban Studies, involved in the Green Twins project. And I will start with the project at High Performance Computing Center in Stuttgart, where we developed a digital twin for the small town of Herrenberg, focusing on urban challenges in this area. The topic was mainly focusing on the problems that cities are facing, a deficit of digital strategies, digitalization strategies, and a shortage of human and financial resources. And so we tried to develop an open source, open access kind of digital twin, or using tools to create these, and to improve the citizen empowerment. We used geoinformation data, so with models of different level of details. They were provided by authorities such as land surveying offices, And we completed it by modeling and by, for example, here you can see 3D scans, 3D laser scans, modeling, and also mapping on models, so to get a realistic image of a city, and we visualize them in virtual reality environments. Data we implemented were, for example, pedestrian movement and stationary activity. The focus was on social interaction, and, for example, pedestrian movement, stationary activities, and also the quality of space. For this, we developed a very basic mobile application to capture this urban data and spatial quality and to implement civic science. So we had a group of young people testing our very basic app to record data and to measure their subjective view of a city, the quality of stay, for example, and this data was geo-referenced. So we had movement involved. We had, for example, feelings, where are fear spaces, for example. The kids could take pictures of different spaces, adding comments like with the chat function, and record urban sounds. And this was then realized in our virtual reality environment in the digital twin. We also recorded the movement traces of bicycles and the movement traces of pedestrians, and also the danger spots, for example, for pedestrians in the city of Herrenberg. This was also to support, to learn to know how are people using the space and why are they not using certain spaces. We included also building information modeling. Here we focused on future projects to be implemented, also for having them in participatory processes, so people could have a view from certain viewpoints in the virtual reality environment. Another layer was space syntax analysis we used for scenario development. So in this city, several transport planning variants were discussed, and we tried to add some evidence with space syntax, how likely is that certain routes are used in the future, and we had the people involved there. And another layer was emissions and traffic. So we had a sensor network used by citizens. So this was also part of the citizen science program. So we had particulate matter combined with wind flow simulation and also traffic simulation. So we had cars running around in the twin and having certain areas simulated, how traffic flow could be improved, how traffic can be reduced, and how danger spots can be improved for the future. Of course, we are focusing on participation and using virtual realities for that. So a big advantage is that in this virtual reality environment, for example, in Stuttgart, this is a cave automatic virtual environment. We can involve several people if it's not a pandemic, and it's possible to have kind of up to 15 people in such a space. It's a cube-like space with a back projection in 3D virtual reality environment. People are tracked so they can experience an immersive environment. So this is finally decision and planning support tool. So let me check now. Here I am. But now to Tallinn and the Green Twins project we are working on at the moment. So this is a project together with Tallinn University of Technology and with Accu University. And what we are focusing on is of course, participatory urban planning. We are looking at the green urban infrastructure in Tallinn and in Helsinki to include them in their urban digital twins. So the focus is on the quality of space, on green spaces, on also the Nordic plant ecosystem. So what this is built upon is a library of green objects, and a web-based co-planning application is going to be developed. This is linked to an urban tempo simulation application, which provides with simulation data and their visualization. And finally, a city hub in Tallinn. This city hub should finally work as a human-computer-human interface. So it's going to be a built infrastructure in Tallinn city center. We don't know yet how it's going to look like, but one of the major goals is to have it accessible and to have it to include most stakeholders possible, and to have kind of a broad range of people being involved. So I'm going to jump over this because this is kind of more or less explaining how co-planning app, physical city planning hub, and the simulation app are working together. And we are building on networks in Tallinn as well as in Stuttgart. So please contact us if you're interested in collaboration, if you're having your ideas, or if you're having questions. And thanks a lot for thanks a lot, and I give back to you.
Thank you so much, Fabian. Very interesting. And again, you can always Google Fabian Dempsky on YouTube or Google, and you will find in-depth information, because it's short to give this presentation in 10 minutes. And I will also encourage you to write questions in the YouTube chat. And we will move forward with welcoming Charlie Goldstein from Civic.
Thank you, Victoria. Really nice to be here. So I'm Charlie. I'm an architect and at Civic. I'm also a senior researcher at RISE Digital Systems, where I've been leading Sharing Cities Stockholm for a few years. And today I'll be sharing some results from our project there with citizen engagement. So if I can have that little film clip running, I can start talking you through. We're going to fly over the city of Stockholm. Of course, Stockholm has a really great 3D map, and we should help populate it and bring content to it. Here we're seeing that the air quality in Hammarby Sjöstad is really great, because those green streams are actually sensors that our residents have played on their balconies in the city district, where we zoom in now in a few blocks. For example, here is a block that architect Mats Segelius designed 25 years ago, before urban farming was even on the map. And he thought that residents should be able to do some urban farming together. So what we did is we did a laser scanning of this block and of some other blocks, focusing on the shared spaces in this city district and trying to see how we can support community building in view of a local climate goal that has been set by a citizen initiative here. So this is all part of a mission that's ongoing in Europe now, to really transform cities into climate neutral cities 2030. And to do that, you really need to bring citizens on board. So here's a typical shared space that's been scanned, and where we can add any kind of information, of course, onto this onto the 3D model. We're working in Unity here, and here you have a little sense of the block. This is not about the quality as much as of the idea of sharing with the residents how would you like us to work with you? Up here on the balconies, we've been running workshops so that citizens can put up their own air quality sensors, as an example. But we also looked for spaces that are heated spaces that in an electrified society shouldn't be needed anymore. For example, parking areas, because you don't need your own car in such a smart and sustainable city district as this is. So we're going to go now into a space that could be transformed into urban food production, for example, or it could be used just as a meeting space where the kind of data, information that a neighborhood platform for the city block could contain. So it can be completely customized, and you can have, of course, Zoom or interaction windows where you can meet, for example, for the housing association meetings, or of course we can share any kind of streams that residents would feel is useful. So here we brought the whole 3D map into this space. So we're still in a 3D space, and adding this model so that we here can visualize, for example, air quality, but it could also be, for example, for this block that I showed you earlier in the clip about urban farming, we wanted to see if we could support neighbors, perhaps with showing how irrigation, watering, or the soil quality, humidity in the soil, or biodiversity could, for example, we help the neighbors in there, strengthening the community by helping each other more. So these are really just examples of streams that we can bring in here. What's been really important to us is that there needs to be a sort of client side to this a 3D model that we built. All is in GitHub for you to take part of, but we really want the neighbors themselves to be able to upload their data. So we take quite an interest in doing that. So of course this could be used for any kind of sharing, and sharing data is of course quite a large topic today in preparing municipalities in their digital infrastructure. And the Sharing Cities program has really focused on how do you scale from one city to another? How can you avoid proprietary platforms? And I will now from here move to a few slides just to conclude so that you understand what on earth it is I'm talking about. There were really strong links, I think, to the two previous presentations, which is very nice. Share screen. There. And now I think I'm sharing. Let's see. Now I should be sharing with you. All right. So the streams are good air quality. The program is called Sharing Cities Sweden as part of Viable Cities, a strategic innovation program for smart, sustainable cities in Sweden. And Stockholm is one of 4 test beds exploring how the sharing economy and citizen engagement can speed up climate transition. And here is the partner team that's been working on this project for a few years now. And so we're dealing with different strategies in how to bring citizens towards a local climate goal for 2030. So I'm just sharing parts of what we've been doing now, but by zooming into some of the blocks, we've been able to address things like urban farming or urban food production as an example. And so the neighborhood platform really needed to show both information relating to climate issues and relating to the building, but any other kind of impact that citizens themselves can have through citizen science, like we saw just in the earlier example. So we've been running workshops with children, and this girl, of course, she learned how to make her own sensor for measuring air quality, and therefore she put that up on her balcony in this block. And so that's why we have been working with this kind of space to show that spaces that no longer need to be used in one way can have a new function. And so I'll be really glad to continue talking to you about this at a time when we have more time, both with my colleagues at RISE, but also now I'm so excited that I'll be able to link this up, this work that we're doing at RISE and Sharing Cities. Of course, it meets up with work that we saw also in the previous examples that is ongoing in architectural firms right now, where you can use 3D modeling, of course, linked to all the projects that we're running. So this is what I'm really looking forward to, bringing these worlds together in future projects. So there you are. My presentation is done, and we go into some discussion possibly.
Yes, thank you so much, Charlie. And again, you can look up Charlie Goldstein and her work on YouTube and Google and get more in depth with it. It's again hard to do it to understand everything in 10 minutes. But let's open up for questions now. I have one specific question for David, but then I have some general and burning questions for myself. But let's start with a question for David. And everyone, please feel free to ask your questions now. So it's Andrea who say, hi, David, great presentation, very inspiring. I wonder if interoperability between Unreal and other programs like Unity, Maya, 3D Studio Max, etc. is possible. I see that this is someone that talks your language, David. What do you say? Oh, David is mute. Oh.
Unmute. Sorry, that was my bad. It's a big sort of topic of conversation is interoperability in the industry, and one of the things that we do work on very closely is making sure that our tool does speak to as many different tools as possible. So 3D Studio Max, Maya, Revit, SketchUp, Rhinos, the list goes on, where we are the aggregator of all these different data sources. So I think, yeah, there's a great tool that we have in the engine, which we're constantly updating, and it's free. It's called Datasmith. I'll provide a link in the YouTube chat so people can check it out further.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Andrea, if you have a question more, or are you wondering something, just put it in the chat. One thing that struck me that I have to ask you, because I know that when you work with a lot of development projects that are quite challenging, and you have to sort of marry citizens with something that's very both accessible, maybe too accessible when it comes to ethics and those kind of things, but also difficult to get people engaged. I always wonder who is the driving force behind it. What is driving the digital twin city today? Is it the tech people, tech players? Is it the government? Is it research? I mean, I've seen you all in your collaboration, but who's actually steering the wheel? And I'd like an answer for all of you.
Let's go first.
You can start, David, because your mic is on.
I mean, I think from a technology point, which is the sort of part that I can play in this conversation, is, our goal is to make the tools and the capabilities possible. If there is a limitation or a blocker, we would hate that technology is part of that blocker. So I think we're trying very hard to make sure that those doors are open. And, just from my time in the field and in the industry, this is usually a thing which is actually starts in the sort of lower levels from the sort of architects, the engineers, the urban planners. But I think for there to be major change, it needs to kind of come from top-down approach, from governments, from owners, operators instead. But that's just my thoughts.
So what do you say, Charlie?
Yeah, well, I think tech always believes that tech can drive, but we can never solve the trust issue through tech. So it needs to come from another direction, and I think it is actually. It's coming from top down, from the kind of mission driving climate transition. That's a strong push, and that's trying now to bring on board the civil society itself. So I think what's really important now is to find those civil society actors and let them, enable them, empower them, because that's where you find it. And I think Fabian's example with citizen science is somewhere there in Europe. But for example, in Sweden, we have an interesting situation where we pay a lot of taxes. We have a really we have a really good societal infrastructure, and therefore citizens can take a more passive role. This is really in a contradiction to what we would like. So you have to work with many different methodologies and strategies, I think. And digitalization, digital tools, and gaming, of course, is one of them, but it's not the only one.
Fabian, what would you say is who's driving the digital twin? You want it to be the government, but is it the tech players really? And you're in research as well. I mean, that's another force.
Well, I think we have to be aware that these digital twins, digital tools, in general, for focusing on urban planning and urban design, they are, of course, they are businesses. There are companies very fast forward in this topic. What my concern is that, for example, in Central European countries, for example, in Germany, Austria, or these are examples I know quite well, that the planning disciplines are not aware of this digital transformation as they should. So I think there's a lack of awareness concerning these processes behind the development. And I think it's also very important to have a bottom-up approach, to follow a bottom-up approach, top-down, bottom-up, and to say that tools are important, but they are not forceful, that they are not the solution. So the solutions are the people behind the tools.
So Charlie, you wanted to comment that?
Yeah, because I think also behind the tools, the level of tools, there is a layer of a lack of standardization. So if you take the municipal challenge that Fabian mentioned, the planners, there is not yet between municipalities, neither within a country. There are some examples of initiatives in countries, of course, that have pushed the standard forwards, but to try to find to benchmark and to find ways of developing a digital infrastructure from the municipal perspective has been a really important part of the Swedish development. We have one project called City as a Platform, led by RISE, with 70 municipalities trying to really find common tools, common framework, not tools.
That's interesting. Now, I thought that, and also back to what Fabian was saying, somehow, and I feel that too, working at an architectural firm, that we are sort of the in club is talking to the in club. But the fact is, most people have no ideas of how this is work, and even, I mean, they wouldn't understand a thing of some of your presentations, and that would just be too futuristic. So somehow in this plan, we need to have some form of education or engagement to make people interested. But what would you say would be the main challenges when it comes to civic engagement in digital twin cities? And Fabian, you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's the main challenge is to reach all most heterogeneous groups of people. The problem is usually stakeholder engagement is traditionally like there are often well-organized groups behind. Certain people are usually not included. This has to do with language, for example, with education. Also, it's an age-dependent problem. So we have not very often young people in civic engagement, and tools like David and Charlie are developing, and methods. These can support these processes, and I think it's important to attract people in these processes and to have kind of certain attractors, or call it magnets, to bring people together and to show them their possibilities, and also to visualize, to simplify the complexity of these urban topics, like simulation or things you cannot see, as David mentioned. This is important because usually language if it's a plan, like a 2D plan, and planners and specialists and experts are coming up with usually with numbers and with PowerPoint slides and with their language. And I think it's important to find a common language, and visualization can build up a common language in this case.
Yes, I totally agree with you. What would you say, David?
Yeah, I completely agree with Fabian. It's this idea of communication is key to kind of attacking these large-scale problems or these large-scale sort of goals that everyone's facing, whether or not it be about civic engagement, digital twins, sustainability, climate change. It's how that information is communicated. It's how it is put in front of people, and it needs to be done in a way that it is understandable, that people who, regardless of their background, regardless of their understanding even of technology, should be able to get to the point as simple and as fast as possible. Whenever you put roadblockers or you put jargon in front of that, or you put all these sort of other hurdles, then the point can get missed, the point can get lost. And I think this is one of the problems that, what Charlie was bringing up earlier, is this idea there's no standardization, which means there's 20 different people doing it 20 different ways. And through that, you start to lose that translation. And therefore, it hinders the development. It hinders the future of what we're all trying to work towards. So, this is, and that's really the only part that, technology or sort of game engines play in that, is just that communication level. That kind of background to that is we want to work with that. So it's an interesting problem.
Yeah, I'm going to let Charlie answer also, but I need to have a reflection, because my other question was about equality, but now you're actually talking about it. I mean, as you were saying, if it's based on a technical solution, we're going to exclude not tech-savvy people, or even more people that don't have means to buy them or access them, or even old people. And then also I'm thinking about the engagement in equality. When I work in lower income areas, the elections result, the people who attend elections are very low statistic, and this will be the same issue. And I know we had a big discussion in Sweden about some of the ports that we are building, and that are sort of environmentally friendly new build areas, or eco areas, that could also be called areas for the rich people, because you have to have money to access to live environmental friendly today. And I'm scared that this could be, I mean, we have to really work with these questions and really sort out people that are not being able to just access these tools. But Charlie, what would you say is the main?
Well, now you are broadening. It's important what you're doing now, broadening. So I was going to say trust and the lack of business models, but I have to also add, of course, norm-critical design perspectives on this kind of tools. This is really important. And when we look now at the sort of innovative methodologies that are used in Europe, like climate citizen assemblies for the climate, and citizen budgeting, for example, using tools such as Decidim, trying to find ways of reaching out to underrepresented groups of society, in a really direct democracy kind of way. This is really important that we bring that into our design of the 3D environments. Otherwise, we're failing. Basically, we are architects and designers as we are in the real world. And now the responsibility in the virtual world is even greater, I'd say, because others don't really see the nuances and the power perspectives. So that's because you opened that, Victoria. But if I can just mention, because we also need to talk about business models. In the sharing economy, when we've been studying this for a few years now, you can say that that's a shift towards citizens. It's really citizens leading new forms of entrepreneurship. But as long as it's going to be based on very closed, platforms as a business model, and as long as the tools that we're working on are not, interoperable and modular and customizable, etc., we're making it very difficult for people to join in. So we need to think in a more cooperative way, business models, where citizens themselves sort of have a stake And that's what we were trying to imagine in these studies in the blocks in Hammarby Sjöstad, that neighbors are actually part of the urban food production, and they own their neighborhood platform. They choose which services they need there.
We actually have a question about business models from a listener, but I need to wrap this conversation about equality first, because I was thinking about your presentation, David, and also in relation to the fact that I do have a teenage son. When Minecraft came along about 10 years ago, the urban planning people were quite excited about getting young people to engage. Young boys, basically, that's what happened. And again with Fortnite, and it's very, I mean, I saw you billion users and friends, and I was thinking, how many of these are women? I'm not saying there aren't, but I think, I mean, young women are really like a dead spot sometimes for planning in public spaces, and also they barely occupy public spaces. We have some statistics of this when it comes to the norm critic that Charlie was talking about, that in between the ages from 7 to 19, 80% of public environment with activities actually inhabited by boys. So that's, I didn't want to let that one go. So norm critical perspective, focusing on young women would be really good.
Absolutely, and it's one of the things which I know the tech industry is starting to sort of have more of a focus on, kind of diversity and inclusion, which we're going all the way back to kind of the education routes to make sure that that is being sort of equally promoted and supported. So there is definitely recognized by the technology community that this is something that needs to happen more. There's some great organizations that I've seen pop up. Women Who Code is one within the industry, which is gaining a lot of traction and importance. So I think that inclusion part is a big place of where we're going. And I think just back on the topic of, making sure that we're inclusive to everyone, including, whether or not it's age or, poverty or where you come from, this is also a big focus for tech as well. The idea is to try and get the technology into the hands of everyone. So you don't need, having VR headsets are great, but the technology should never be VR only. It shouldn't limit you to having to be able to afford these headsets. It should have that, and the ability that even if you just have a 20-year-old computer that's connected to the internet, that should have the same output and quality. So I think that's on the it's on the onus of both the technology and the provider to make sure that that output that you're creating isn't limited to one particular tool, but it's for all tools and all features. So anyone who has a smartphone. And I think the kind of final thing around this is just the idea that I think what a lot of people are focusing on is just this idea of storytelling. So as architects and engineers, our background is how we tell a story, how we craft a story. And as Charlie said, that's now converging from the real world into how we craft a digital story. And we have to be just as careful when crafting that story to make sure that we target people like the elderly who are maybe less familiar with the technology or how to use something, and make sure they get the maximum use case out of it. So all super important and big conversations in tech right now. And, we hope to continue to see more and more development around this. So, yeah, hopefully get more engagement as well.
It's really good to hear. Fabian, do you want to comment this as well?
Yes, sure. What I wanted to add is that I think it's important to have interfaces between in the real space, in the built space. We call it human computer human interfaces in this sense. So these are built interfaces. For example, the idea of the city hub we are following in the Green Twins project. So we want something which is in the neighborhoods, which is in the cities, and which can act as an interface between these data models and the human beings and the citizens, with visualization, for example. So this could be mobile solutions. This could be mobile solutions going on site directly in the different hoods. Yeah, strengthening collaboration between cities, citizens, businesses, and research, for example. And I think it's important to have these magnets, the spectacle. People like spectacle, people like theaters or circus, let's call it a circus. And to have kind of this participatory circus wandering around and including people. And so people are attracted to this. I think people like fun. Yeah.
That's good. That's lovely. Participatory circus. But let's move over to Masha, who has a question about business model. I think, Charlie, you were almost answering the question earlier, but let's go. Hi, Masha. So thank you for the presentation. I want to ask about how the business model for development of such technologies are different, since they want to include citizens and public administrations as well. Charlie, do you want to round off? You already started sort of answering that, but
yeah, I think we need to see who the stakeholders are, and they need to be really central in this sort of. I mean, as an architect, I can see this as a design process where architects need to go much closer to those concerned in any context. But there are, of course, ways of involving citizens much more than just the traditional sort of design dialogue or design methodology approach. And I think that's where there is a potential with this serious gaming that we're talking about here. At the same time, we're back at trust. There's also data security and safety at hand. I mean, whose data is it we're talking about here that we're about to share? Who is contributing? Who is generating data? Those people are the stakeholders, and so we need to look at cooperative forms. I think we need to rethink the services that we're providing. Maybe as consultants, we shouldn't just deliver drawings or models, you know. We should be there throughout the building's lifetime, because now that we know that the 3D models are parallel sort of worlds or spaces that we can use for interaction, why shouldn't architects and citizens, you know, collaborate on that? I'm sure there is something we've not yet explored in that direction.
no, that's
Absolutely.
interesting.
I also find it very interesting, you know, this idea that we still sort of submit these 2D drawings, but we design and work in 3D. So, you know, updating that standard that, you know, the output that the deliverables should also be kept up to date with how we're currently working. It seems almost archaic to kind of work in this immersive world, only to then flatten it and cut it down and present it in a kind of very stable format. And I think that has to be led from higher up. So whenever you look at technology and their business model in this, you know, it's most of these tools, you know, not just ourselves, but a handful of others, they're open source and they're free and they're available. And the emphasis is on, you know, what you wish to do with it and how you wish to market it. But I don't ever think it should be the blocker. It should, as Charlie said, it should be the addition. It should be, what are you submitting alongside it as an expectation rather than an ad service or an additional sort of cost around it? Because the second you add that cost as a blocker, then you're going to start limiting who gets access and who can see it. And it goes back to the equality argument, and that's not really fair. So again, there is a lot of development that needs to work, and security I'll touch on a little bit, just because, you know, it's come up a couple of times. You know, this is equally important, or probably the primary importance of the industry is, you know, where is the data, who's managing it, who has access to it, who is in secure sort of isolation of that. And there's some big players out there who are, you know, answering these calls. But I think it's also, you know, we don't handle data, but we are equally in that field of wanting to make sure that whoever is managing that data, that is handled in a way before it comes into the engine, which is safe and secure. So yeah, all of these things are very important to the development.
Thank you for that answer, Fabian.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that it's important to combine different products, for example, or to use different approaches. We can use commercial products, but we can combine them with open source, open access. And what is danger, or what I think is a danger, is creating dependencies of municipalities, for example, to the big players. If there is, for example, not just to create just the product of a digital twin, which can be then not accessed, or the data cannot be accessed by the citizens and by the municipalities anymore. Or the question is, of course, data ownership, and I think it's important to strengthen municipalities and to work together in collaborative teams from research, from industry, and from the citizens. So that's I think important for the development in the future.
I just want to add one last thought on this. It's my favorite quote, which I love using all the time when people sort of wonder, what is the value proposition, or what is the kind of cost model behind doing these. I think it was the CEO of Jeep who said, if you think a good idea costs a lot of money, wait till you see the cost of a bad one. And it's this idea that, these things are worth investing in because of the return that you get by having a smarter, more efficient end goal. So the return is never to kind of collect the buck at the beginning, but actually that engagement ends up leading to smarter and better spaces. So that cost alone is generally comes back onto itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Time is running. We only have a couple of minutes left, but I have a question that I want to talk about. I mean, when we do citizen dialogue, we get a good analysis of how the situation is right now, like a situation analysis. How do people walk? Where are they scared? What do they feel over here? And we often see that, in order to reach our goals, people need to change their behavior. So my question is, so engagement is one thing, but how do we create behavioral change, and how can the digital twins contribute to that? So I'm sorry, I see you're smiling.
It's really difficult. I mean, it's a very complex issue, behavioral change, and you, if anyone, as a social anthropologist, your own skill and expertise is very attractive in all these contexts, as you know. But you did say citizen dialogue is all about getting an overview of patterns, etc. And for me, that's not citizen dialogue. I think to really address or to find the keys to participation and to behavioral change, we need to work with value-based design methodologies that really open up those sort of value-based, basically the culture foundations that citizens have as a group or as individuals. We need to find ways that really trigger their engagement. And I think design plays a role, but it's not design in itself. It's living in a neighborhood, being part of a community, all those basic psychological, frameworks as human beings, those are at play. So that's why technology never manages by itself. So the multidisciplinary that was mentioned by Fabian is the way forward. Yeah,
let me just do a correction. It could be that I'm not speaking in my language, but I didn't mean that citizen dialogue was about the situation analysis, but that's the first step of it, to find out how is the situation right now, and what do we need to improve, and how can people contribute, and what is important to people. So it's several layers, but you start off there, and at least to start to analyze behavior change. And so David and Fabian, you also need to answer this question, but great answer, Charlie.
I would say we've already talked about it, other than what Charlie said. I think the biggest thing around behavioral changes is education. I think a lot of this just comes from the fact that people aren't aware. And it's that awareness and how that information comes across that actually helps educate towards people's change in the mentality, change in understanding of something. Generally, as sort of a society, we don't really understand something until it's right in front of us or it's directly affecting us. And I think with technology working alongside these other sort of disciplinary approaches, we have that ability to communicate that, to show them how these things do impact them and how these things will impact the way that they work. So education's my big one.
Yeah, great. Mine too. Fabian.
Yeah, I just want to add some things to the digital twin and change of behavior. I think that with we can already forecast several scenarios for the future. And at High Performance Computing Center in Stuttgart, we are using supercomputers to simulate, for example, climate change. And if you can break that down bring that down to the local level and to show the people what are the effects of global warming, then I think this can support the change of behavior for sure, and to visualize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
if I can also just add briefly that I really think the strength of the digital twin is its visual capacity and the three-dimensional capacity to really to illustrate what things will be like after, after we reach the goal. That's really important. And all the initial planning, the carbon cost management tools and bin mitigation tools that we're using is really geared towards that, visualizing the future now together.
Thank you. And I also want to just say that this thing with education, we should not be on too high horses of what our young citizens actually are capable of today. This needs to get down in the elementary schools. And I actually heard a philosopher just saying that our generation, the five of us sitting here, our children, in all generation, children and young people always thought their parents didn't get anything, but this is a fact in our generation. We are not getting what they are getting. They're so beyond us already. So there's hope for the future in our children. But I want to thank you so much, Charlie, David, and Fabian, and I want to encourage everyone to look these amazing people up and at YouTube and Google, and you have great information on all of their projects. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank
Hope
you
to meet you all again.
Thank you, everybody. This was great. I'm still thinking about a lot of these points that you brought up, and it really shows that we have a lot of work to do, maybe widening our horizon a little and going away from the tech and going a little bit more into the social scientists, the anthropologists, and involving other disciplines that I think is crucial to make the next step with this technology. Great. Once again, also thanks from my side. It was a really inspiring discussion. Great inputs from you. Thanks for moderating this session, Victoria. Last, I just want to point out next session next week, next Wednesday, same time. We will talk about opportunities for circularity. I hope to see you back then. And the 6th seminar will be our last. And I hope that many of you will join for that one. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.